Hey everyone, Phil Pendlebury here, and I hope you're having a super mega large day. Welcome back to the Steinberg Nuendo channel and my little section Nuendo Explained. So, continuing from the last video where we looked at the project logical editor, I'm going to show you one of my favorite little concoctions that is all made with the project logical editor, and it's all to do with constraining delay compensation. So let's have a look. Okay, so I'm really quite excited to show you this one because we're following on from the last video, as you know, and I'm going to use the project logical editor to show you one of my presets I'm quite proud of. So let's give you the scenario and we'll walk through it from there. So have you ever been in this situation? We've got a voice track here. Let's say it's a vocal, doesn't matter. It could be a guitar, could be anything that you want to record live. And you've been building it up and you've got some quite intense plugins on there. For example, Gullfossna Soothewa both cause a lot of latency. And as you can see, the latency on that track has gone up to 62.4 milliseconds. So if we were to try and record now, you'll get a huge delay if you're monitoring through Nuendo, which of course a lot of us do. So you may or may not be aware of a way around this. It's called Constrain Delay Compensation. And what we have is a little button up in the top left here, which you might not even have noticed. But if we click that, what it'll do is look at a parameter and make an action on it. So first of all, let's show you the parameter. So we're looking at preferences and we've gone to the VST area of preferences. And if we look down here, you can see delay compensation threshold for recording. And I've set it to 1.5 milliseconds. You can change that to whatever you want. Why is that relevant? Because what will happen now is when we click that delay compensation button, any plugin that's giving you more than 1.5 milliseconds of latency will be disabled. And you can see that in action now. If I just deselect that track so that the plugins are quite clear and the track itself is in record mode because we're going to record on it. And if I go and click that button now, you can see that Gullfossna Soothewa have both been disabled, but the Steinberg black valve has stayed open because the latency of that plugin is less than 1.5 milliseconds. And of course, to enable it again, we then go back to the top left of the screen and click the button. So what's the problem with constrained delay compensation? Okay, well, there's two things, and both of these have caught me out so many times I don't care to mention until I built this preset in the Project Logical Editor, which kind of solves the problem for me. Now, whether or not you use that feature, the CDC as we like to call it, doesn't really matter. I'm sure you'll still find this interesting. So let's go into it in just a little bit more detail. So first of all, problem number one. Problem number one is that it's a little tiny button up in the corner here. And, you know, if I zoom the screen out, I'm on a 4K display here. You can see it's tiny. It's a little orange button. And when you get into the thick of things, you will quite often forget that it's switched on. So if you imagine, in fact, this is a good example. Gullfossna and Soothewa, they're both quite subtle sounding plugins, although they do have a great effect. They're very subtle. So I've clicked the button here and it's orange. And then I've continued working and I've actually continued mixing and completely forgotten that I'd disabled those two plugins. And of course, you can imagine that this could affect your mix quite drastically depending on what the plugin is. So that's point number one, forgetting that you've enabled it. Point number two, forgetting that you've enabled it, but then going to mix down. And you would think that mixing down, it would not have an effect, but it does. If you mix down with that button enabled, your mix down will not include those two plugins. So that's why I built this preset. And it's based around a very simple concept. it's based around a warning track. So if I show all tracks here, you can see I've got a big orange track there that says CDC on. And that wasn't visible earlier, was it? You noticed that. But what I wanted was something like this that was really visual on the screen, linked to when I enable Constrain Delay Compensation. Okay, the first step is to make your warning track, exactly like I have here. You can make as many of these as you like. You can make them whatever color you like. And the important thing is to remember what you've named it. So in my case, I've named it CDC on. It can be a MIDI track, can be audio, it can be anything you like. But the important thing is to get the color and get the visibility so that, you know, it's really obvious. You can even make two. You can, let's just duplicate that. We'll duplicate that track and we'll put one here as well. So, you know, we've got a bright orange thing that's running across the screen. But CDC is actually off at the moment. So the next step is to hide those two tracks. So I'm going to select them and I'm going to go here and I'm going to go hide selected tracks. And now they've disappeared. Now, when I enable CDC, of course, apart from the plugins being disabled, nothing else is going to happen. And this is where the magic of the Project Logical Editor comes in. So we'll open the Project Logical Editor and we're going to find my preset, which is CDC Warning. And let me take you through it. So the property is selected, or the container type is equal to a track, and the name is equal to CDC on. So it's going to look for any track that has that name that we mentioned earlier, CDC on exclamation mark. The track operation would be to hide the track and to toggle it. Pretty straightforward. The difference here is that we're going to add the pre-process command, which would be to constrain delay compensation. And that's the trick. So we've got our track record enabled. You can see there, and you can see that the plugins are active. And what we're going to do is hit apply and see what happens. Now then, I'll do this slowly so that you can see all of the screen. There we go. And as soon as I hit apply there, you'll notice up in the top left that the CDC button was pressed, and that the two warning tracks, although I did adjust the name of this one earlier on, the two warning tracks have showed themselves quite clearly. And if I hit apply again, the CDC turns off and the warning tracks disappear. Now then, let's just do a little real-time edit on this. So I'm going to hit apply again. And what I noticed earlier on, I edited it out of the video, but I'm going to show you. I duplicated the track using the old method and it had the R there. So what we could have done was said name, instead of equals CDC on, we could have said contains CDC on. And now that would work on any track that contains that text, not just specifically that text. So it will also work on the one that we duplicated earlier on. And there you go. So the final icing on the cake with that is to add it to a key command. Now, I showed you this earlier on in the last video, and I'm going to show you again because it's very, very important for this. It makes the whole thing work seamlessly. So if you've already seen this, never mind, but let's have a look at it again for the benefit of people that haven't. So we're going to go up to Edit, Key Commands. And you can see that the last operation we did is selected in the Key Commands window, but that is actually not the one that we want. What we want is my preset that's in the Project Logical Editor. So I'm going to type CDC, which was the name of my preset, and there it is. And then I'm going to assign a key command to it. So now that's done, all we have to do is hit my one key, and you can see that it's really easy to toggle the CDC on and off. And not only that, we get a huge warning on the screen showing us that it's active. And that means that when you're mixing and when you're editing and doing whatever you're doing, you're not going to forget that CDC is on. Because, like I said earlier, it's such a useful feature. If you haven't used it before, please give it a try. Don't forget that you can set the amount of latency that it will cut off at. I've got it at 1.5 milliseconds. You could change that to lower or higher. But it's a really useful feature. But just those two little things always become a problem in Nuendo. So I hope that preset will be useful to you. And along with a lot of other presets I've got, they're all going to be there for you to download. I'll put the link in my description of the video. And I think that's about it for now. So that concludes this one, Constrain Delay Compensation. If you didn't know, now you know. I want to say a big thanks for those of you that have been following through with us so far. Thanks for all the lovely comments. And of course, any suggestions about what you'd like to see, please do keep them coming. We're not ignoring them, we're just kind of building them up and figuring out where to put them all. And aside from that, give us a quick thumbs up, like and subscribe and all that would be great. Thanks a lot, guys and gals. I will see you on the next one. Bye for now. Cheers.